So let's jump in, guys. If you're ready, I'm ready. We're going to get started. We're going to talk about fortifying your investments and protecting your assets, and a little bit about estate planning. And Greg, left coast Disney. I'm just saying Disneyland. It's the OG. I'm just saying. All right, so let's learn some stuff. Let's have some fun. But the first thing I have to do is this. I Don had his disclaimer. I have my own. Here it is. This is for informational purposes only. I am not giving any specific legal advice. Yes, I am an attorney, but I am not your attorney. So as we're going through this, just know that I'm speaking in general and that I'm not giving you any specific advice, and I do not represent you in any kind of capacity. We're just talking today. That's it. This is the most important slide in the whole deck. So if you need to take a screenshot of it, that's great. Just kidding. All right. A little bit about me. Don kind of already covered it. That's a much worse picture of me. So we're just going to skip over that. And we're going to talk about these guys. So Anderson Business Advisors, just a quick rundown, was founded in 1999 by Toby and Clint. And they came together and they're like, hey, there's plenty of attorneys suing people. So let's be on the other side. Actually, about 30% of attorneys go into personal injury, believe it or not, whereas only 0.5% go into asset protection. So we're the good guys, they're the not as good guys, and but there's less of us. So we focus on combating and preventing lawsuits. So Clint and Toby came together for that. Michael worked for them for a little bit and then left, did some litigation, realized litigation is not as rewarding as asset protection, and came back and joined as a principal back in the day. Since we were founded in 1999, we've helped over 17,000, much more than 17,000 clients protect their assets. So it really is our bread and butter and what we focus on. So we do the asset protection and the estate planning. The key to what we do is we take a three-prong approach. So we come from multiple different angles. And I think three is actually probably not enough. But we come from a tax planning perspective, an asset planning perspective, an estate planning perspective. And I think a really good fourth leg to that stool is a business perspective. So the great thing about the attorneys here and all of our advisors is we practice what we preach. We're not just doing it based on theory, on books or whatever. Like Don said, I own 4 businesses now, 5 businesses now. I also own real estate. I practice law. I do what we talk about. And I'm actually an Anderson client myself. So I use a bunch of our services because frankly, I don't want to do it. So I have other people and I'm like, might as well hire Anderson because this is where I work. All right. So those of you out there that are building wealth or starting businesses or have been running businesses for 20 years, do you feel like this? Do you ever feel like this? You're driving down the road and see a billboard and you're like, that's probably somebody trying to target me. Yeah, I see a couple thumbs up. Anybody else? Like if you haven't given me a thumbs up and you feel like this, let's see the thumbs up emojis. I don't think you can go down an interstate anywhere in America, in a city, and not see billboards that put that little tingle in the back of your brain. Like, wait, what? I'm sitting in my office in Reno right now, and driving into Reno, there are a bunch of billboards about workers' comp, and I have 50 employees, and I'm like, what? You drive down, so our main office is in Las Vegas. You drive down I-15 in Las Vegas, and all you see are all these billboards, personal injury attorney, personal injury attorney. We've recovered billions for our clients. Personal injury attorney. You might see a strip club, then more personal injury attorney, right? So that's the thing. Everywhere we go, I live in Utah, and there's a billboard around the corner from my house. We've recovered billions for our clients. What that really equals is we've recovered 333 million for our attorneys. If you think about it, right? But yeah, we all as investors or business owners or people who are building wealth, we have a target on our back because there's 2 ways to get rich in America, right? We can win the lottery, not in Nevada or Utah because they don't sell lottery tickets. Or you can sue somebody that has stuff and take their stuff, right? Those are the 2 ways. And so, unfortunately, we do. We have a target on our back, and it's not fun. But who puts that target on our back? Well, risk comes from multiple different angles. So, real estate investors out there, anybody investing in real estate, give me a thumbs up. If you're investing in other things other than real estate, give me a heart emoji, just so I can speak to it as we're going. Real estate, lots of real estate. Wonderful. All right, I didn't see any hearts flow up. So do we have any non-real estate investors that are just doing like stocks, bonds, syndications, mutual funds, cryptocurrency, anything like that? Okay, hearts are flowing. All right, so we got a little bit of both. Wonderful. Yeah, Donna, in a small community, if you're driving like the nice brand new truck, you're gonna stick out, right? Like syndications, wonderful. All right. But so our risk, it actually comes from all directions, and we're going to talk about three main ones, right? So we have our personal liability, what we call outside risk. So personal liability comes from driving that truck down the road, right? Especially if it has our business name on the side of it, or our neighbors know, or we go to church with people that know we own businesses or we own rental properties. Uh, I have two teenage children that drive cars, and they both live in my house. And one's 19 and one's 17. And the cars are my cars, and the insurance is my insurance. So if they do something silly and get into an accident and it's their fault, they're broke teenagers. They're not going after them, right? They're coming after dad. So we have to think about all these structures and how do we protect it. But there's not just that, right? So we have, if we are in a professional practice or if we have employees and you have some sort of lawsuit for whatever reason because it happens, or if you enter into a business contract where you're like, hey, this business contract sounds really, really great. Maybe it's a lease agreement, maybe it's a purchase agreement. And then you do some more digging and your due diligence period has already passed, but you do the math and you're like, this isn't going to work out. So I'd rather just walk away and deal with it. Well, people could sue you over that. So there's a lot of different places on the outside that risk comes from us, right? But there's risk on the inside. This article on Reddit took me about 12 seconds to find. I don't know. You know how Google gives you the little thing at the bottom and it like these results in this many microseconds? That this was the first result. I couldn't believe it. A step-by-step guide to suing your landlord. Now, this was really about how to get your deposit back if you paid a deposit, but maybe the landlord withheld the deposit for a good reason. Maybe this person, anyway, doesn't matter. This is on Reddit. It's all over the internet. How to do it on your own, because it seems that tenants are getting to the point where they think they know more of the law than the landlord or more sophisticated, and they're looking for all those loopholes. And for my California friends, there's a lot of loopholes. Have you ever tried to evict someone in California? Did you try to evict somebody in California during COVID? Oh my goodness, right? It's just, yeah. Okay. So the chances of you being sued, the chances of your tenant suing you, they're not 100%. But where is 100% chance of somebody taking from you what you've earned? 100% chance. Mhm. Your silent partner in everything that you do always gets his piece one way or another. Yep, the tax man. He's coming for it, right? He's coming for it. So we have three risk factors. So we have to really, oh, Canada. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And your taxes. And anyway, we have actually Canadian clients. So we have structures for you guys up there. But yeah, these are the three places that we have to think about, right? So we have people coming after what we have built as investors, as business owners, for our wealth that we want to pass on to the next generation, or we want to do good with and donate to maybe like nonprofits or whatever. We are better stewards of our money than these people that are coming after it, right? So we really have to think about how can we possibly structure our holdings, and we all have different pieces. So I'm going to draw out my structure here in just a second so you can see exactly what I'm doing. And maybe we can talk about what you're doing and how it might be similar or different, and we can just discuss that. But the idea is, okay, we got to mitigate risk from three different directions. And unfortunately, there's just not one answer, one size fits all answer for everyone. It's, that would be nice. There's gurus on the internet that are like, hey, here's the one thing that you need to do, and that's all, and that's the only thing we do. And they just churn out that one thing over and over and over. But not all of us are the same. Not all of us have the same goals. Not all of us have the same aspirations or the same short-term and or long-term desires, right? So we have to think about that and take a holistic approach. And I think that's really what we do great here. But we want to remove that target. And we're going to use a combination of entities to do that. And so if you see here, from the outside risk, we want to use an entity that has charging order protections. And I'm going to dive a lot deeper into that when I start drawing. Charging order protections are what protects our assets, the things that we have worked hard for and built from us, from our 19-year-old son who drives a very slow car, a 2017 Outback. If you guys know anything about that, it's very slow, right? But things still happen. Protect from inside liabilities like tenants and help reduce that tax man burden by using the corporate structure. So I'm going to jump over to my whiteboard and we're going to draw out a couple of these things. All right, you guys want to see my structure or no? Are you interested? Because I can just if you want to see my structure, give me a thumbs up. Couple of hearts, couple things. All right, well, let's talk about structuring and then we'll drop your questions into the Q&A. As we're going through this, I would love to answer them as we're going. Because right now I feel like, just talking into a void into the camera, right? But I would love to answer your specific questions as we go. So please drop them into the Q&A. Happy to do that. All right. So here at Anderson, well, here's my structure. And it follows the Anderson because I definitely drink the Kool-Aid because I work here. But if you are with Anderson or you ever go through one of our consults, we're going to start with the most important document, the living trust. That should be your foundational document. It is the keystone. It is what controls everything, and it is your responsibility to set that up. It's really, really important. And we're going to hit that right after we talk about structuring. But the living trust. So my living trust is at the bottom. This is the Knight Family Trust. And then we use an LLC. Again, if you remember back to the slide, there was a blue box and it said LLC with charging order protection. Clint calls it COPE, charging order protection entity. And we want to use an entity that gives us charging order protections because that is actually what protects us from outside liability. That protects us from our investments from us. And so what a charging order is, and without going super deep into the details, a charging order is essentially a lien from a creditor against distributions from an LLC. Now, every state has some sort of statute that says the remedy for creditors against your LLCs, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously, against your LLCs is a charging order. Now, some states, looking at you, California, take that a step further and add additional language saying, but if it takes too long to get paid in the judgment of the court, then a creditor can foreclose on your business interest, meaning they can take your business from you if the court thinks it's going to take too long for your creditor to get paid. So, who's part of the creditors? It's also the attorneys for the plaintiff. So if they get a judgment against you and they're like, hey, I want what you have, I'm not going to wait for a charging order, an attorney tells you to pay another attorney. That's kind of a theme in California. You'll see the other part here shortly. But we want to use a state that does not allow foreclosures, but states that do. Okay, it's like California, Colorado, New York, Washington, and a bunch of the Midwest states. And I don't remember the map off the top of my head, but there's a lot of them. And then a lot of other states allow for receivership, which means a court can appoint someone to tell you how to run your business if they and take distributions. But there's one state that we really like that says the sole and only remedy is a charging order. And then it goes on later in the statute and says not only is a charging order the only remedy, but all of these other remedies like foreclosure, receivership, all of that are not specifically not available. So the only thing they can get is a charging order, which is a lien against distributions. And that state is Wyoming. So we like to use Wyoming LLCs because charging order protections. But the other thing that Wyoming does for us is it gives us anonymity, meaning the state doesn't not only do they not report the ownership, they don't even collect it. They don't care. They just want their money. And they're like, hey, if we set up an anonymous state that has really good charging order protections, you know what? We're going to get thousands upon thousands of businesses set up in our state. And then we don't have to have state income tax for our 400 citizens. Okay, there's more than 400. There's like 571,000 people in this state of Wyoming, but there's more in my county in Utah than in Wyoming. I mean, let's be honest. It's a big state with not a lot of people. So that's how they help pay for it. They set up thousands and thousands of LLCs. So my wife and I, we have an LLC, a Wyoming LLC, but actually we have two. And again, this is my structure. And so one of these is our non-liability asset LLC. So here's an answer to anonymous attendee. Should you hold your brokerage or checking savings account in an LLC? Our Wyoming non-liability asset LLC is where we hold our brokerage account. It's where we hold our cryptocurrency. It's where you would put your syndications. You can invest in notes. Anything that's not going to hurt someone can go into this. Your extra cash, if you're sitting on a boatload of cash, can be held in this LLC. And the cool thing is, and I'm going to change to green just for the flow of money here really quickly, is you can send money up and take money out at any time out of this LLC, and that's not a taxable event. It's when you have a profit. That's where your taxable events are. So if you have your extra cash sitting up here and you have something come up, like prom is this weekend for my daughter, and she wanted a really fancy dress. And I'm like, I don't want to buy you a fancy dress for one night, but her mom won the argument. So a little bit of extra cash came out down, and the living trust is you. You are your living trust. So a little bit extra came out to pay for that dress. It is what it is. I lost the argument. It's fine. She's 17. I get it. But anyway, but like if one month we make more cash in our other businesses than we want to hold, we can just move it up there and it protects it as well. So anonymous, yes, you would hold your brokerage account and savings account up there. Your day-to-day operations cash should just be your personal checking account. So that would be down here, right? So, hey, I want to go out to dinner. I need to pay my mortgage, whatever. All of your normal operations should come out of your personal account. But anything that you're like holding for savings or investing with, that can go up in that Wyoming LLC. Now, we had a bunch of real estate investors, so let's talk about real estate. For my wife and I, this is how we have ours set up. We have 3 LLCs for our real estate investments, and they are in Utah. Because my wife and I bought our properties when Utah was affordable in 2011 and 2012. Now it's not a great state to invest in necessarily unless you can find a really good deal because it's very expensive. All right. So we collectively decided to split up those investments because they're liabilities to each other. So we set up one LLC per house just to keep them separate. Now, markets that we're looking in now that we're looking in North Carolina a lot. So it would be in its own North Carolina LLC. And all of this is owned by that Wyoming LLC. Why? Because of the charging order protections still apply. We don't want to let the wolf in the hen house, if you will, right? The attorneys on the outside, those are the wolves. They're staying out of my investments. I'm protecting my investments from us and from our children, right? So this is how we have our setup. North Carolina is a future one, but I like that market because it's reasonable to get into. All right. So if we have this outside attack, we still have this brick wall right here. We have this charging order protection, so nobody can get past it. Now, do we have small business owners? Anybody out there running any kind of service business or retail business or any small business owners other than real estate? Give me a thumbs up. All right, we got some. We got a heart floating, so I bet that's a fun business. Awesome. So my wife and I, we actually have, oh, lots of business owners. Wonderful. We have an S corp for our cleaning business. And that S corp actually owns a second location, which I'm sitting in right now, Nevada LLC, disregarded to our Utah S corp. It's for our cleaning business. Now, S corporations, and I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail today about the S corporations, but they are fantastic because it helps reduce your self-employment tax burden, right? It just really does. Because if you do any kind of business through a partnership or disregarded LLC, all of your profits are subject to self-employment tax up to like $176,000, and that's 15.3%. But if you can reduce the amount of W-2 salary you take out of your S corp, then you can take distributions, and distributions out of an S corp are not subject to self-employment tax, which is fantastic. So really, I mean, you could cut your self-employment tax burden in half or less, depending on how much you take in that reasonable W-2 salary. All right. And on the other side here, we actually also have C corp. And the C corporation, we actually started up because we have the end in mind. You begin with the end in mind. And so we have an exit strategy out of this C corporation, which actually owns a second LLC in Utah for its second location. But when you have a C corporation, there's this really, really great tax code called the Small Business Qualified Stock Exemption, and it's fantastic. You can sell up to $10 million in stock after a 5-year holding period and not pay a dime in tax. Who doesn't want to pay tax? Give me a thumbs up if you'd like to reduce your tax bill right now. Thumbs up. All right. So the corporation, and the reason, so if you notice here, we have active, we have active on one side and passive on the other. This side is active, this side is passive. And the reason is there's two different tax codes and we want to take advantage of both of them. So as a person, we earn our money. Then Uncle Sam takes his part. Then we get to spend and try to live off of whatever's left. But a corp, either a C or an S, it gets to earn, then spend, then tax on whatever's left. And if you play the cards right, in like a C corporation, you're paying zero tax. It's pretty awesome. Where would you put vehicles if you want them outside of other entities, just entities by themselves? Vehicles. All right. So vehicles is where, and the reason this is applicable right now is vehicles, we actually like to reimburse ourselves for our personal use of vehicles. So if we have this truck, and remember, I'm going to leave this here. So we have this truck, and I did not go to art school, guys, so it's going to be very crude. So we have this truck, and we drive it every day to and from work, and it's our commuter. And yeah, thanks for the laugh. Yeah, it's bad. I get it. But we're driving this truck, and it's our normal commuter, but we drive it for business sometimes. So maybe we drive it to a job site, we drive it to look at a house that we want to purchase, or we want to fix and flip, or whatever it is. So if we're driving it for any kind of business use, we can reimburse ourselves at 70 cents per mile. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but if you do a miles tracker, that turns out to be really, really good money. For example, I just drove from northern Utah to Reno, Nevada, and I will be driving back in about a week and a half. And that is 550 miles each way. So I get 1,100 miles reimbursement. 1,100 miles is $770. I definitely didn't spend $770 in gas. So what I do is I keep track of my miles, and at the end of the trip, I submit to my S corporation a reimbursement request. And I say, "Hey, S corporation, we stayed in a hotel for 12 days and we drove 1,100 miles and we had a whole bunch of meals. So I need you to reimburse me for my out-of-pocket expenses. The same way I travel for Anderson a lot, the same way, right? Anderson reimburses me for what I spend. So what I'm able to do is a lot of my personal expenses, I'm able to say, hey, instead of using this tax plan where I'm spending money after tax on eating or driving my car or whatever, I can change and use this one because, hey, corporation, you need to reimburse me because this was all business related. Hey, corporation, I went out to dinner with my wife on Friday night and we went to a nice restaurant. But you know what? We talked a lot about business, like, because that's all we talk about, because that's all we do is business. So reimburse me for that meal, right? So we can really, really take advantage of this. Hey, corporation, I have this cell phone. You can't see, there it is. I have this cell phone and I use it for business, not 100%, but I use it for business. So corporation, you need to reimburse me for it because I'm using it on your behalf, right? Whereas if those things, if the car is in the business, if the cell phone is in the business, they need to be 100% business use, or the personal use could be taxable to you as a benefit. So it's better to have the corporation just reimburse you. And there's all kinds of things, and we just don't have a lot of time to talk about it today, but there's like the 280A. That's the Augusta rule where your corporation can rent your house from you for up to 14 days a year, and that's tax-free money. There's all kinds of ways to use this corporate tax code in your advantage. So even if you're sitting over here in the passive side, something that you might want to think about is how can I set up a corporation to take advantage of the difference in tax codes? All right. Let's see. Umbrella policy enough to protect your assets from teenage drivers that you insure. It's a great question. And here's my answer. Yes, I do have a personal umbrella policy. I absolutely do. I would lie. I would not lie to you because that's silly. But there's always little things that insurance companies do to get out of paying claims. Was the kid on the cell phone? Well, I mean, if we can prove he was on the cell phone, then we're not going to pay the claim because that's not covered, right? Was the kid under the influence of any kind of alcohol or drugs? Well, we're not going to cover it because it doesn't, we have this little tiny rider in it that Preston didn't read when he signed it saying, yeah, if it's your fault, unless you're under the influence of alcohol or drugs, or unless they were on the cell phone or they were text messaging or whatever, right? So there is a place for both. And I would never say one over the other. I think you should have both kinds of insurance. We have the business entity structure, the legal structure that will protect your assets, but you also have insurance. I had a client who was a 30-year investor. She was, and we set up something for her and it was exactly right. And so we had her holding company and she had a bunch of LLCs up here and she was a 30 years she was growing this portfolio and it was like 20 properties or just under, it was like 18 properties. And she called me and I talked with her and she had a house and it burned down. And because she had been investing for so long, I'm like, hey, do you have insurance? Contact your insurance company. She's like, Preston, I don't have insurance because they're all paid off. And I didn't believe that I needed insurance because they were all paid off. Like, okay, so we don't have insurance, but I see that we set up this structure for you. Did you deed the property into the structure? Did you move the title into this LLC to protect you? She's like, no, I never did it. She never deeded the property in. She got 90% of the way and didn't complete it. Like, okay. And she's like, one more thing, Preston. Somebody was in it. And so like there's literally nothing she could do. And instead of having all of her properties protected from each other and in these LLCs where they should have been, she didn't complete the task. She never deeded the properties into the LLCs. So instead of having protection from each other and protection from this, she was down here and all of the properties she had been building for 30 years, plus all of her personal assets were at risk in this lawsuit because she just never finished. Right? So, yes, if you have properties, you should still have insurance. You should have a personal insurance. And the other thing goes to my wife was in a car accident 15 years ago now. In May, it'll be 15 years. And the amount of insurance, so the total for four people, the total medical bills were like about $3 million because it was severe. The total insurance for everyone involved was like $360,000 because everyone carried state minimums insurance because no one like really knew or cared to pay a little bit extra to get better insurance. So yes, if you get if you get into an accident and it's your fault or your kid's fault, you should take care of those people, but you want to protect everything else, right? So there's a place for both. And I think don't do one or the other, both, right? Because if it is your fault, I believe you have a moral obligation to, take care of those people, right? Anyway, hope that helps. Canadians cannot establish LLCs. That's correct because in Canada, LLCs are treated as corporations, and that is a huge tax burden. But you can use limited partnerships. You just have to make sure that your CPA in Canada understands the limited partnership structure. And then, yeah, so that's what we do for our Canadian clients. Question here from Kevin. If you hold your brokerage account in an LLC, does it not get a treatment as a corporation? No, you tell the IRS how you want your LLC tax. That's the cool thing about LLCs. If we set up this LLC here, we have four options on how to have it taxed. We can have the LLC taxed as a disregarded, which is kind of like a proprietorship, right? So if you have one member, you can have it disregarded. And then the IRS doesn't even see the entity because they don't care, right? So the LLC is this hybrid. So you get the legal treatment and you get the tax treatment. On the legal side, you get the protection of an LLC. If we choose disregarded on the tax side, the IRS doesn't even see it, which is great. And so you can either do disregarded or have it taxed as a partnership. If it was like you and a spouse, and this is actually how my wife and I have ours. It's taxed as a partnership because everything's 50-50 in the Knight household, even though it means we have an extra 1065 tax return. It's fine, right? But no, you don't get taxed as a corporation. So you still get that pass-through treatment, which is great. All right. 280A would not trigger an audit because you're just receiving money and you're issuing an invoice to your corporation for the time in your house, which is really cool. There's actually someone last year at the Masters who rented their house out for the golf tournament, just like 6 days or something like that, for $100,000, and they paid zero tax because of the 280A Augusta rule, which is great. All right. By the brokerage, not the IRS. So it depends on your brokerage holder. So some will require you to have a higher balance to have it in an LLC. But cool thing is we gotta fix for that too, my friend. If you run into that, and normally it's like 250K. If you don't have 250,000 in your brokerage account, but you want to move it into an LLC, we can move it into what's called a personal property trust. So we assign that to the LLC, and the brokerage doesn't care because it's in a trust and you're allowed to do that. And then you just assign your interest to an LLC and now it's legally protected. really cool strategy. We use it all the time. Yep. Yep. All right. I'm going to jump back to my slides here. Um, and we're going to talk about estate planning. All right. So we went through some structuring, and guys, that is literally just the surface scratching of what we can do. And it just, if you looked at my structure, you can see where it's not like it may be anybody else's structure. Uh, Yours might be very similar. It might be very, very different. It just depends. And unfortunately, I have to give you that attorney answer, but it's actually the best answer because it means that we don't just do one size fits all for everyone because that doesn't fit all, especially in the legal world, because we don't know what you want to do. So, just one really quick story. I was working with a client and they're moving from California to Texas, just like the rest of the state is doing. And they just have rental properties for income and they have this passive, so they have this passive income, but they also have a huge amount of depreciation. So their tax bill is really low, but their income is also really low, right? So we were talking, I'm like, hey, you guys are moving to Texas. What's your goal there? What do you want to do? They want to buy a house in Texas. I'm like, okay, because you want to buy a house, you need to have income if you want to get a mortgage. And they're like, we know, but we only have this passive and it's only rental and it's depreciation and all that stuff. I'm like, okay. So set up a C corporation. And they're like, C corporation, double tax. I don't want a C corp. I'm like, follow me on this just for a minute. Set up a C corporation. Have that C corporation manage your rentals and take a W-2 wage out of the C corporation. And they're like, wait, but we're going to pay more tax. And I'm like, absolutely. You're going to pay more in tax, but you're going to have W-2 income that you can show to your mortgage lender and say, hey, look, I have this income. Please give me a mortgage. And then they will. And then they can change how they get paid afterward. But in order to show, you have to have at least 3 months. Most mortgage lenders, maybe up to 6 months, right? Will require in pay stubs if you don't have a tax return with it. And they might require that. So, yeah, you're going to pay a little bit more in tax. Absolutely. But for them, it made sense because they needed to show that income so they could qualify for a mortgage. It's not one size fits all. But let's talk about the most important thing that you can possibly do. Because listen, guys, this is not for you. This is absolutely not for you. You are punching your ticket out. So if you don't do estate planning for your family, then you're leaving them with a couple things to deal with. And I think it's the worst possible two things that you can put on someone. You're going to be grieving over the loss, but there's also going to be greed. And if you don't step in and stop that, then it can destroy families. And my family is one of those families. And it's over a very, very small amount of money. My mom moved in with my grandmother as my grandmother started aging. She took care of her. My mom uprooted her entire life, moved from one city to a little podunk town in New Mexico called Farmington. And if you've ever been there, it's not great. She moved to Farmington. She took care of my grandmother. While my mom was living there, my grandmother was like, hey, thank you for coming here. I want you to have the house when I die. My grandmother had a will, which was great, but she didn't change the will to tell the family that my mom was getting the house when she passed. My grandmother passes. My mom tells her sisters, hey, mom said I get the house and then we'll split the rest 3 ways. Well, sisters don't really care for that because they're like, no, the only value in the entire estate, because my grandmother did not die a wealthy person, the only value is in the house. So we all want our piece, right? And I mean, there's other nuances anyway. But ultimately, what it came down to is my mom had to buy out her sisters in the house, and now they don't talk over a very small amount of money, like very small, like 30 grand. And that's terrible, right? So we don't want to leave our families, our when we punch our ticket again, we're out. We don't want to leave our families dealing with that kind of issue. So there's 3 ways you can plan or not plan. First way, no plan at all. Terrible plan. Don't do that. You want to have a plan in place for your family because again, it's not for you, it's for them. I do have a client that I'm working with right now who is like, Preston, my plan is to have no plan. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. It's going to go through probate. It's intestate probate, meaning you're not leaving any direction. So it's going to go to the state default rules for probate. And he's like, yeah, I know. That's what I want. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Guy's a CPA, supposed to be good with money and numbers, but he wants intestate probate in California. I'm like, why? And he's like, I don't have any family. Like, I just don't care. I don't want to do it. I don't want to bypass probate. I just want it to be whatever. And here's my suspicion. I truly believe that when he punches his ticket out, checks out of this world, he's going to go to heaven. CPAs go to heaven. Attorneys, we don't. Anyway, he's going to go to heaven. He's going to eat popcorn and he's going to watch the fireworks while his family is fighting over everything. That's my suspicion. I don't know, but it could be. Anyway. But yeah, I mean, no plan is not a plan. It goes through probate. It's very public records, right? Especially in intestate probate, because if you guys have heard of the artist formerly known as Prince, that guy's estate is still not closed. It's still not closed. That dude had died forever ago, but he didn't have a plan, right? So he has all of these people coming out of the woodwork saying, I want a piece of that. That's okay. But really, who is winning having that estate open this long? It's the attorneys. The attorneys are winning because they're all getting paid no matter what. And the estate is going to be eaten alive by attorney's fees. And there might not be any money left, frankly. Anyway, we don't want to do that. Another plan is a will alone. And this is better than no plan, but it's still not great because it still goes through probate. And probate is not a cheap process if you have even a small estate, especially in California. I'm sorry, guys. Camera is like in California, they tell you how much you're going to pay your attorney, which is great, right? And my face is huge. So it's a very expensive process to go through because you're paying hourly rates or even a flat rate with attorneys. That could happen. And it's very public. And here's one thing that that happens, especially now, when people can find out, like, hey, there's a house that's empty somewhere, doesn't matter where it is, whether it's a football player playing in Buffalo and they live in Houston, or it's somebody passed away and there's nobody that survived them in the house. People break in and they take stuff and they squat and it's just not good, right? They destroy things. It's awful. And it can take 12, 16, 18, up to 24 months, depending on what state and what's going on, right? During COVID in California, probate got up to 24 months. It took 24 months for people to put the estate to bed to really be like, okay, we're able to give out all the property and move on. That's a really long time. Plus, who's running your business for those 24 months? It's not good. All right, so I'm going to show you the California code. This is for paying your attorneys. So attorneys are telling you how much you're going to pay other attorneys to do your probate. And they disguise it as saying, hey, guess what? It's this is to protect you so you're not overcharged. So if we read through this, the key word is shall, and it's highlighted in red. And then there's like this really complicated, like, okay, if it's under 100,000, then 4% and 3% of the next 100. And I did the math. Here's the math. If the estate is $1 million, which is owning like a trailer on a podunk piece of land in the middle of nowhere in California, I mean, not really, but you know what I'm saying. It doesn't take long to get $1 million estate in California. It costs 23 grand. Yes, I did the math, 23 grand. $5 million estate, 63. $10 million estate, $113,000. And this is just in probate fees, guys. And then if we go back, here's my favorite one. For amounts over $25 million, a reasonable amount to be determined by the court. So we're going to let, again, an attorney determine how much is reasonable for another attorney. I should just do probate in California. I shouldn't even be I'm just kidding. I love what I do. So the third is a living trust, and this is what everybody should do. If you have property and or children, you should have a trust. That's it. It's not just for the wealthy. It's not just for the people that, like trust fund babies. And that's what we think all the time, right? It's only for rich people. Only rich people need a trust. I don't have enough money for a trust. I don't need it. I don't need even a plan because nobody's going to come after it anyway. Property or children right? Either one of those, you need to have a plan in place because it's not for you, it's for them. For them, it's for other people, it's for your family. The cool thing is a living trust is something that's revocable and you can change it anytime. And it holds the title to all of your properties, all your businesses. You name it as a beneficiary on your life insurance policies, your bank accounts, all of that kind of thing. The big thing is you keep control, right? So you're keeping control of it. So you can say, yes, I have this $700,000 life insurance policy. That's great. And if I die right now, I want it to go to the trust and not to my kid because my kid's 19 years old. And if he got 700 grand, he's going to buy a Ferrari and then he's going to be poor. And that's it. He's going to be out of money. But if I put it in my trust and I can say, yeah, at 21, he gets some money. At 28, he gets a little bit more. At 35, he can have the rest and hopefully he has it figured out. Or I can put it into my living trust and say, hey, you know what? I really want to do good in the world and I want to have this, I want to have my name live on for a long time. So I want to give it actually to a charity. Or I want my kids or family to set up a charity in my honor using my trust estate funded by life insurance, which is great. Or I want to pay for generation after generation after generation down my family line for people to go to school. You have the control and you can decide what happens to your property because it's your stuff. It's like reaching from beyond the grave to say, no, 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 don't do that. Do this instead. And you can do that with the living trust, which is fantastic. And you can't do it with anything else, right? And the other thing is, it skips probate. There's no $23,000 probate bill for a $1 million estate in California. It skips it. You could literally be lying on a hospital bed, take your last breath, and then your family can go out in the hallway and start splitting up your stuff. I mean, it's not that automatic, but it basically is, guys, because they don't have to wait for a court or the blessing of somebody to say, yes, you can go take that and that's your property. The successor trustee with the death certificate can now start giving out your property according to your instructions that you're reaching from beyond the grave to make. And it's our moral obligation as people who are building wealth to not leave it up to our children. I truly believe that. I think greed and grief, and I've seen it in my family, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen it in your family. It's a horrible mix, and it brings out the absolute worst in people. But if they don't have a choice and it's already decided, then they can just grieve and move on, right? I don't know. That's how I feel. And I think that's really, really important. Okay. All right. So part of being here today is my QR code didn't show up. That's okay. We are doing 45-minute strategy sessions, and I'm sorry to change direction so quickly because we got a little somber, but we're doing 45-minute strategy sessions. The link is here. It's the aba.link/DonP48, and that's for April 8th. So if you go to that link, set up a 45-minute strategy session with one of our attorneys like me, one of our senior strategists. We're just going to sit down and say, hey, what do you have? Where do you want to go and how do we get you there? We're going to come up with a blueprint just like this saying, hey, here's your blueprint. This is your business structure. Here's where you are. Here's your plan going forward. We're going to mark some of them future and say, yeah, this is where you want to go. And we're going to get you there. And that's where we come in, right? So we set up these asset protection and tax saving structures for you. We talk with you about it, and then we help you maintain them. So yeah, definitely check that out. Go to that link, sign up for a 45-minute strategy session. Let's do some Q&A. Are you guys ready for Q&A? Thumbs up for Q&A. Nobody wants to do Q&A, I guess. Oh, there's a couple. Okay. All right. What do you think, Don? Should we do
I
some?
think I think you did a great presentation. Okay, Teresa is asking, what about transfer on death? Can we just transfer or a payable on death with your bank account, transfer on death, we avoid probate, we don't need the trust. What are the problems with transfer on death and payable on death?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to do that, right? There's transfer on death, there's like ladybird deeds, all kinds of things to help avoid probate. And that's all we're talking about. We're avoiding probate. And frankly, that's not a terrible thing to do, but you don't have any control. Do you want to like again, my kiddo, if he got my bank account transfer on death, like it's jointly held. Like my wife and I are holding it jointly. But if we both go, or I die first and then my wife goes, because that's how it happens, right? Do we want everything to be paid out instantly to somebody who's 19 years old? Like if my wife and I died in a car accident and he gets all of his inheritance instantly because it's payable on death. So you lose control, and it's also easier to challenge, right? Because it would go in, somebody could say, oh, well, they weren't in their right mind, so it's going to go into it should be included in the whole estate. And then, okay, yeah, now the whole estate should be divided amongst all the people coming out of the woodwork. So um, I don't love it. Is it one way to avoid probate? That piece, probably, but it doesn't do everything that a trust does.
Preston, here's what I don't like about transfer on death is my I do a transfer on death deed. My son inherits the property, but he's right in the middle of a divorce right then. Or he's right in the middle of a lawsuit, or there's an IRS lien. Or, well, I really wanted some of the money to not go to my son. I really wanted to do some generation skipping. And
Hmm.
there sometimes it's the word payable on death for bank accounts, transfer on death for deeds. But sometimes you're giving them a gift that's not opportune time for them to receive it, but they're going to get it when you die. Yeah, and you're not really establishing your values. And the last thing I want to do is give kids an asset that is going to hurt them, not to benefit them. Is that any comments on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's the great thing about a trust is you could keep it in the trust for generations and you can set it up. Yeah, it's just the loss of control, right? It's just instant transfer and you don't know what's going to happen to it.
Right.
Um, I'm an attorney, so I might be a little bit of a control freak. So,
Let's go back to the top because I think you
yep.
answered some of them. But Donna is asking, technically, she opens a money market account in Michigan. She lives there. Can she register then in Wyoming? You kind of talked about that. But yeah, you technically don't own the bank account anymore, or the money market, or the brokerage account. The Wyoming holding company does. And because it's not doing business in Michigan, it's not like a cleaning company or a grocery store or gas station. Um, it's a brokerage account, so it's money. You can put that anywhere you want to. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's the thing. Like the Wyoming LLC is just the holding company and it's just holding your assets, right? And so when we're talking about holding dollars in a bank account, it's just sitting in an account, basically on a ledger inside the bank, right? So it's just, yeah, having that protection of the Wyoming LLC is really it's protecting it from you, and that's why I love it so much, and that's why we do it. Like my wife and I, we have that Wyoming LLC, and we do that because hey, we want protection from us because like I do silly things. I was out in my yard and I was digging post holes for a fence that blew over right in the same spot the original holes were in. And I cut like a 300 pair phone line that was like this thick in like 12 places, Don, 12 places. And it was on a Sunday. So they had to send out the emergency crew to fix the phone lines for my entire neighborhood. And so that bill was so expensive because I was silly. Now, fortunately, my insurance agent was like, we got it covered. But if they didn't, they were going to sue me for like whatever the bill was. I don't remember. It was a lot of dollars. So we do silly things. We take chances in our car. We look at our cell phone to make sure that Bitcoin isn't tanking today while we're driving. Those kinds of
Right. Right.
things.
Yeah.
So, um,
Okay. Did
Anyway.
you get the very first question on here? If you have one property, would you do the Wyoming LLC and then operate it in another state as a foreign entity? Did you, if you answered that,
I
I
did
missed it.
not, and I would love to
Okay,
answer it. I think it's a great
great.
question, and that's why I actually came over to the whiteboard.
Okay,
So with that, and the answer is no, F, because Wyoming only gives you the Wyoming protections if it stays in Wyoming. So let's say that that property is in Colorado. I'm going to pick on Colorado instead of California. If the property's in Colorado, we want to have a Colorado LLC owning it because we're doing business in Colorado or whatever state, right? And so because we're doing business in that state, we need an entity in that state. But if we were to foreign file a Wyoming LLC into Colorado, now we're subject to both states' laws, the Wyoming laws and Colorado laws. And where do you think your tenant would rather sue you? Colorado. Where
where
do you
they
think
are.
somebody on the outside would rather sue you? Colorado. So we don't want to take our Wyoming LLC and foreign file it into any other state because we want specific exclusive jurisdiction to be Wyoming.
Cool. Yeah. Um, Now, if you that's the only property you have. Now this is really good. What you're showing is really good if I'm expanding. That okay. But there was a time when I owned a property in Arizona, just me and my wife, and we didn't do the Wyoming holding company. We just, I know that would have been perfect. I teach asset protection, but sometimes is good enough, or do we need asset protection A plus 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 every time we do a little property?
So it depends,
Okay.
Don. It depends on your risk tolerance, right? So
Okay.
obviously the best way is to do this. And if I'm going to be adding number two and then number three and number four, then I want to do it this way, right?
Yep.
Because I want them separate and not. And then when I get to 40, do I need 40 LLCs? No. Then you
Yeah.
start putting multiple properties in. If I have one and I'm like, I only want one because tenants are a pain in the butt and I just need this one and I just got a really good deal on it. Is it okay to do it this way? Sure, it is. Just understand the risks, right? There's risks in everything we do, and you just have to know them.
And by the way, this was probably a very small part of our overall estate. Had we lost that, you know what, we would have bounced back and we, so, all right, there has to be a reasonableness to everything that we do with asset protection.
Yeah.
I've seen people create a massive structure to protect a $5,000 brokerage account. It's just stupid. Do, be reasonable and prudent in what you do. Okay.
I completely agree. We actually had a client who signed up for our titanium package. That's the unlimited LLCs. And then we're like, okay. And he's like, I need all of these LLCs set up. Like, okay, they're all set up and ready to go. Where are the properties? And he didn't have them yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I remember early days. A guy called me. He says, I got my 57 limited partnership set up. His doghouse was in a set. I don't know what he did, but it was just stupid for a small estate. Yeah. Okay. For passive real estate, what is lost if there's no Wyoming holding? I think we just answered that. But yeah, I think we did
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Is it true that forming an LLC with a single owner has less protection because it's easier for the liability to pass on to that owner?
So this is a great question. And actually, there's some states that don't recognize a separation between a single member LLC and and the owner, right? So a multi-member is much, much better. Now, the trick is if we look at how we structure things using this Wyoming LLC, even if it's a single member, Wyoming treats it the same as if it had 1,000 members. Again, Wyoming doesn't care. So if you, and Florida's the state that's the worst with single member LLCs. So if you were going to set something up in Florida, we would just want it owned by a Wyoming LLC, and then it can be single membered and disregarded the whole way down. And you don't have to worry about that issue because the single member of the Florida LLC is another LLC. And so you don't run into that same issue. So it really, again, it depends, but if you use the holding company and everything's single member and you use the right holding company, you can avoid that issue completely.
Good. What is the equivalent of a personal private trust in Ontario? Well, Canada does recognize trust, but I don't know what's
Right.
the
I
um,
wouldn't know. And I'm not licensed in Canada, so I can't speak to that. I would love to help you out, but I have no idea.
yeah. I went through probate for my deceased relative. It took 5 months and cost $12,000. My wife's family fought over a multi-billion-dollar estate for 19 years. And when it got settled, each one of them received a check for about $50,000, and the estate was gone. It was estate taxes and probate fees and attorney fees and you name trustee fees and you name it. It was gone. Um, and I
But I
hate
bet the trustees driving or the attorneys driving a Ferrari, guaranteed. A billion
it didn't
dollar
come down to
estate.
the
Yep.
family. Yeah. If you only have one property, would you do the Wyoming? And okay, we
We
did
already
that.
talked about that. Yep.
Which application do you like best for tracking time and activities? Oh, that's good for your corporation.
Yeah, especially if you're like looking to do real estate professional status and you're trying to hit the
Yep,
750 hours.
yep.
I actually have, it's called Time Tracker. That is not a promotion for it. It's what I used as an attorney before because you could put all the individual instances, whatever you're tracking. And then you just have a start and stop button. For mileage, there's a great app called Mile IQ. And again, I don't get paid for saying that, but it's awesome because every time you drive, it'll say, was that business or was that personal? And you just swipe one way or the other, and it keeps track of all your business miles for you.
And GPS tracks your mileage. Yeah,
It's
that's pretty.
awesome.
Okay, talk about cars for a minute. Do you put them in the name of a business? Do you put them in the name of your trust? Do you keep them in your personal name? Should your 19-year-old, should we move the car into his name or how do we,
Yeah,
how,
I mean, that would be the smartest thing. Move the car and have him get his own insurance, but he still lives at home, so I'm still at risk. So, but it's a great question. It comes up all the time. So for cars, we don't generally like putting them into a business unless it's 100% business use. So if we look at my structure up here, let me get all the way up here. I actually do have two cars. I have a car in this entity and a car in this entity, but I don't drive them. They're not for me. They're for my employees and they use them for business use only. But if we're talking about personal vehicles, keep it in your name. And honestly, not even your living trust if it's your like everyday driver, because every state allows a really easy transfer of title for deceased owners. And we change our vehicles often enough that it's becomes kind of a pain in the butt. But yeah, just have it in your own name, have insurance in your own name. If you have a 19-year-old, it's best to title the car in their name and have them get their own insurance. That's another arrow in the quiver of trying to protect your assets. Um, but yeah, so just track your miles. It's way better to get reimbursed and then you don't have to worry about, okay, is this fully business use? Are you paying tax on the personal use side? All of that kind of stuff.
and Clint tells a story way back when he had his business car, but his wife took the car to work and got into an accident running groceries. And hey, well, you drop this off at the bank, and now all of a sudden, Anderson Business Law, or Business Advisors, is pulled into this lawsuit that really shouldn't have been there. That don't. Yeah, his
Yeah.
advice was
Oh,
really, really good on that. I
yeah.
hope you heard that. Okay,
Yeah.
somebody's
Don't
asking,
open those doors for sure.
yeah, there's no reason to. What's the major difference between a Delaware statutory trust and a Wyoming statutory trust for passive real estate investors?
Honestly, Delaware statutory trusts are fantastic for passive real estate investors. Wyoming statutory trusts, we do use them a lot, but not in the same way. And Delaware statutory trusts are very well recognized within the industry. So if you're going to be investing as a passive investor, I would look for a Delaware statutory trust because their case law is well established. If you are buying and selling properties or holding properties in California and you want to avoid the franchise tax board, that's where we use Wyoming statutory trusts. But if I'm an investor just looking for that passive real estate investment, I'd probably look to Delaware because it's well established.
What's the price on Delaware?
I have no idea.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, what happens when the trustee passes away soon after my death? Talk to him about successor trustees.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, successor trustees, generally you're going to have a plan, right? So you have a plan of, hey, this is my succession. And I have one very close family friend who actually has nine successor trustees. That is
Oh,
overkill, but you can do
wow.
it if you want. It's your trust. Uh, but essentially, the trust has to have a trustee. So if you pass and then your successor trustee passes, and maybe even the next successor trustee passes, then either the court or the beneficiaries, depending on how your trust is written, can appoint a new trustee. But you
And
have to have one.
often the trustees will get together and pick up, but it depends on how the trust was written and what happens if, and anyway, Teresa, I
Mhm.
hope that makes sense. What about silver and gold? There's not enough of it. No, that's not what it says. It's where do you, where do you place that? How do you hold title to silver and gold?
So if you have physical custody of your silver and gold, then you can store it in my basement and I will protect it for you. No,
Nice
so
plan.
it's treated, yeah, it's the perfect plan. You will never have to worry about it again, I promise. Um, no, if you take physical custody and it's not custodial silver or gold, then that's personal property, and you could wrap that into your living trust. You could say that it fell in the lake. I don't know. I don't love like I don't love taking physical possession of silver and gold because I think it's a little tough, but I know there's a lot of people out there that do, and I'm just a different kind of investor. Uh, so if you are taking that physical possession, just keep it in your safe, and you'll have in your living trust, you'll have a general assignment document that will assign all of your personal property, which silver and gold will be, whether it's bullion or a block or whatever, and that'll be assigned to your living trust, and then your living trust would control what happens to it afterwards. As far as asset protection, if your gold bars have serial numbers, then you could assign that to your non-liability asset LLC in Wyoming. You could say, hey, I'm assigning my ownership to this LLC of the gold bar weighing, 4 ounces with this serial number. It's a little bit harder if it's just like, a block of silver with nothing on it other than 0.999.
Well, now, so I like silver. I think gold is a little manipulated. I like to have a little silver, and I don't trust somebody's IRA custodian 200 miles away. So I like to have a little bit in my safe. But what I've done is I've listed, 120 ounces of silver on in my safe asset LLC. And it doesn't have a serial number, but they know that it's 120 ounces. Is that appropriate, or did I screw that
I
up?
think no, I think that's the best you can do if there's no serial number. So you can say, yes, it owns 120 ounces. I assigned it. I am contributing 120 ounces of silver to it, proving that that's the silver. I don't know if that comes into an issue or not, but that's the best you can do for sure.
Okay. Um, if a foreign citizen can be a trustee, is that can we do that?
Can you? Yes. Should you? No, because they have to come here for a U.S. trust to have it to be the trustee, and they could be challenged. So they have to come here to court here if it is challenged. They have to come here to be able to sign documents to pass it off. And a lot of those documents have to be notarized in the US. Can you? Ugh, sure, but don't. Absolutely don't. Find someone here. Now, if you have an estate north of $3 million, consider doing a professional trustee service. Um, I really like just taking out the human or emotional fact like aspect of it. Because here's the thing, like let's say that my estate's $3 million and I die and my wife dies, and my son is really grieving, and his aunt is the trustee. He can go to Auntie and be like, Auntie, I'm so sad. I lost my parents. I really need a Ferrari. And Auntie might cave, but a professional trustee is generally a banker. And if we know anything about bankers, they have no heart and they are not going to cave. We have a professional trustee on staff here at Anderson. She came from a bank, and so she told me all kinds of stories similar to that, right? That like, hey, they came in trying to pull on the heartstrings, and you're like, no, this is the trust. This is what it says. If you need a car, I'll buy you a Honda Civic, but I'm not buying you a Ferrari.
Okay. What I've often seen is we've listed several people as successor trustees, and then finally the bank is the final one. It's going to be the most expensive. It's probably going to be, but they're going to do it right, and it's non-emotional. So after I've listed my brother and my sister and my oldest child and people in succession that I trust, which the name trustee implies, and then I've seen where they list a professional at the end. Is that appropriate?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The
Okay.
professional can be like the catch-all because a lot of people will just like, I don't have time to even do it, right? I resign as a trustee because I just don't want to do it. I don't have time.
Yeah.
It's too emotional for whatever reason. So yeah, absolutely. But yeah, if you're north of 3 million, that's where professional trustee services really start looking at you like, yeah, okay, we'll take you. If it's under 3 million, then you might be a little hard pressed to find at least one of the bigger ones to take you as a client.
Okay. We are down to 9 more minutes. We're going to try to go a little faster. We want to get through your questions. We may not get to everybody, but if we don't, sign up for a strategy session. And even if we do get to your question, um, he's offering a free strategy session with asset protection specialists. My gosh, take advantage of that. And if yours goes a little long or it goes a little short, there's nothing guaranteed about the 45 minutes. It's a strategy session, and that's what it's designed to do. Building on the last question, I don't know what that was, but pick on California. How do we avoid franchise tax assessed to the foreign filing LLC? Oh, good question.
It
A
is a
lot of
great
people from
question.
California are worried about that $800 a year.
Per entity, yeah. I mean, if you look at my structure, if I lived in California, I have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. Yeah, that would be a lot. $7,200 in franchise tax if I lived in California. So I get it. Yeah, and there is a big push to avoid that. And that's where the Wyoming statutory trusts come in. So for our California folks, I'll just draw it out really quick. We use a Wyoming statutory trust that you own or your living trust. It should be your living trust, remember, that owns a Wyoming LLC. And the reason we stack them is the Wyoming LLC is really where the asset protection comes in. So we stack them like this. And then you can own your LLCs. Let's say that we have a California property. So we would use a Wyoming statutory trust to hold that. But if we wanted to invest in Missouri, we'd have a Missouri LLC here. We could have a North Carolina LLC here. And this way, anything above this Wyoming statutory trust is considered owned by the trust and not by you. This is a loophole. Is it going to go away? I don't know. But for now, you don't have to file it on this one, this one, this one, or this one. And there's no franchise tax on a trust. So that's what we do.
Okay, good. And that is, you use that a lot for California residents just to get rid of that $800 a year extortion, or I'm sorry, filing fee. Um, yeah. Oh, good.
Yes. Yep. Yep. The California Franchise Tax Board is definitely overreaching because if you live in California and you own an LLC in Florida, you have to pay the California Franchise Tax Board $800 minimum on your ownership just because you live there? How does that make sense? I think it's overreach. I think it's unconstitutional. I can't believe it hasn't been challenged, but that's just me.
Well, I would challenge our California residents, somebody that has a little more money than I do, to challenge California franchise time. I've been waiting for 25 years to see
I
somebody
know.
to do that, but
If everyone
nobody's
just gave a little bit of money, then maybe, I don't know. Anyway.
okay. Um, if I moved my stock brokerage account to another state and then died, would I have to pay inheritance taxes in both states?
So your inheritance tax is based on you, and moving your brokerage account, moving it to a different state's not really something that you can do. So like yeah, like if we put it in a Wyoming LLC, there's no estate tax in Wyoming, like specifically anyway. But let's say that you're in like Washington, where there is. If you die in Washington, your estate's in Washington, even though you have this LLC that owns it, right? So you're not going to avoid it that way, but would you have to pay in two states? No, also no.
And Melvin, there is a difference between an estate tax and an inheritance tax. There's only 4 or 5 states that have an inheritance tax. If you live in that state and you receive money, I think Nebraska is one. I don't know. I always at the summit I always show you a map of here's the states that have inheritance. It's really the estate tax, which is paid not by the receiver but by the
By
giver,
the
the
estate.
person. So no, and Wyoming doesn't have an additional estate tax or an inheritance tax, so you'd be fine.
Yeah.
How
And
is,
just, yeah,
oh, please.
I was just gonna say, you just know what state, if you live in a state that has that, consider moving. And know that the federal limit is like 13 something million now, per person. So it's really high, and there's talk about extending the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. That's really high on Trump's priorities. So I don't see the financial cliff at the end of this year coming to fruition that a lot of people are worried about. So
Okay. Um, Theodore, 45-minute session. Do you have folks familiar with with Canada?
so we do have our strategist can speak to Canada, and I think it's worth at least having that conversation because if you're investing here in the US, then you need to have some sort of structure. And we use limited partnerships, like I said, for Canada. The big thing is going to be finding a CPA in Canada who understands that a limited partnership is not subject to the Canadian corporate tax, right? So, but yeah, I mean, sign up for the 45 minutes. It's free. There's no obligation.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you about what we can and can't do for you. And if it's we can't do much, no hard feelings, right?
Good. Tally, no kids, no siblings. Who's the successor trustee? Okay, you're going to be the trustee all the days of your life, and then somebody that you trust. Could be a best friend. It could be a, I don't know. It could be a sibling. It could be a, I don't.
Yeah, an aunt, a cousin. In fact, my cousin right now is our successor trustee because she doesn't have kids. She's really, really, really good with money, and she wouldn't have custody of my kid, well, my child, because my other one's an adult. But we separated the kids from the money, right? So the person in charge of the purse is not going to be in charge of the kids, and I like doing that for a lot of reasons. But yeah, just somebody that you trust, or you can have like a professional trustee service.
Good. Tom is asking about can you take possession of your precious metals if it's in an IRA?
Mm-mm.
Nope,
Nope.
can't do it. The only exception I've seen is if it's in a safe in your home that you don't have access to the key. And I don't know why you would do
And
that.
that's even kind of a weird loophole
Well,
that
it,
I
it's
don't
it's re-
trust.
it's really weird. I don't know. How much does it cost to have a professional trustee?
They
More than your
range.
kids would charge.
Well, a professional trustee service generally charge a percentage of assets under management. I've seen them as low as 0.5% and as high as 5%. But know that they have a fiduciary responsibility to increase the value of that trust. So, and the more they increase the value of your trust, the more money they make. So it's kind of a good situation. And then you have a bank and not somebody with heartstrings.
Okay. Yep. All right. Our questions, we were down to 7 at one point, but they keep growing and growing and growing. But students, were a little out of time. You've got that free consult available to you. I'm gonna release Preston with a vote of thanks for a job well done and
Oh
tell him
yeah.
thank you and any closing remarks?
No, Don, the big thing is just really like sign up for that free consultation because it's not one size fits all. Everyone is different, and we would love to sit down and talk with you about how we can help. And that's it. There's no obligation, there's no charge. And I think we have probably the best strategists in the, not probably, absolutely the best strategists in the industry. They're going to talk about what you got going on and come up with a plan for you. And it might even be me. Cross your fingers, it's not, because I'm just kidding. No, it's been a absolute pleasure, Don. Thank you as always for having me. Um, yeah.
And one of you asked earlier, what's Don doing on the side? I'm one of my little businesses off the side is I do custom leather work, and so I was lacing a wallet while Preston was talking, and anyway, that's what I was doing. And so,
So I wasn't as important as your leather work, is what I'm
no, I
hearing.
was
Thanks,
listening
Don.
I was very engaged. But hey, buddy, thank you so much. Students,
Yeah, it's
thank you
great to
for
see
being
you.
here and spending your Tuesday evening with us. Um, Now the NCAA tournament is over. I was expecting a huge crowd because there was no competition, but Preston, you've been wonderful. Thank you for
Yeah, thank you so much, Don.
such good information.
Yeah, we'll
Students,
see you
take
next time,
advantage of
guys.
that. We'll see you later. Good night.